Welcome to aging.
Next month is 51.
Hello, everyone. This is Taylor Elwood here with the Submissive Men Mysteries, and I have on here with me Damon Mitchell. Damon, please introduce yourself. Tell us who you are.
Yeah, so well, you got my name already, and nice job on pronunciation. I live in Mexico, so I often have to work with people on how to properly pronounce and spell my name. It doesn't really work well in Spanish. I am, well, like I said, live abroad. I'm originally an American. That's where my passport is from. But I work as a coach in the men's space, which I think you're familiar with. And I've been many things in this life. I worked for years in the fitness industry and leadership development. I did my time in marketing, but coaching seems to be the thing that has called me to work. So this is where I'm finding the most reward these days. I live here with my wife. I guess maybe I should mention my wife and our dogs. We live in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. We love it here. Yeah,
Yeah, so you're an expat. Lucky you. I
yeah,
appreciate that. I'm working my way toward that reality.
really.
No, for sure, but that's another conversation for a different time. Um, and today, the reason I invited you on was because we both have written some articles. In fact, I actually wrote an article responding to one of yours about success.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be really fun to actually do a live interview with you and talk about that because it's something that men live with all the time. The
Hmm.
specter, I call it the specter of success.
Hmm.
And so let's talk about success and maybe I think the first place to maybe start is let's each of us take a moment and define what success is, and then maybe look at performative success versus purposeful present success.
Yeah.
And before we do that, I just want to know, hello, Sheena. Welcome to the show. She's my sweetheart, so she's watching us. And
Hello.
if anybody has any questions at all at any time, feel free to drop those in. As people come on, and they may, I'll put that invitation out there. We might get people from you, from me, all that good stuff, and so it'll be fun. But anyway, let's start with
Cool.
definitions of success.
Am I taking the first
You are,
crack
yeah.
at this? Oh,
I'm
thank
giving
you.
you I was handing you the baton.
Yeah, thank you for that. So this will be interesting here, and I'm going to try not to dance around it too much. I don't think I have a really pat answer. I think in many ways the reason I'm writing what I'm writing is because I'm trying to get my hands on this concept, and I'm noticing that there are ideas that I have of success, and then there are more skillful ways to think about success, and I'm noticing there's a bit of a disparity between those. Um, Traditionally we think of success as certainly from the perspective of a man, in terms of our career and our financial success, and it maybe even more in terms of our larger nest egg, like our investments and what have we accumulated over the course of our life. But it's certainly in most cases attached to money. There's another part of me that knows success exists as something else. You mentioned the piece that I wrote. I'm actually going to go live with a follow up piece tomorrow, which speaks about other elements of our lives and ways that we can define success. But the commonality I've noticed is the ways that whatever we're using as our success metrics is that they're most relevant in the ways that other people are involved. There's an element of success that almost demands other people, and I think that's even true when we work backwards through financial success. A man on an island with all the goods really isn't feeling a lot of success because there's no one to share it with. There's no one to reflect back what that is. So by almost any definition of success, at least as far as I've been thinking about it, the element that makes it relevant is other people.
Hmm, that's interesting. Yeah, when I think about success, I mean, in men, I think definitely there's the financial angle. How much stuff do I have? How many things? You know, what have I accumulated? And that in a way becomes its own trap because,
Hmm.
I think of the line from Fight Club, what you own actually owns you, right?
Yeah.
And there's some truth to that. Like at a certain point, it, it can weigh you down in a way. So there's that aspect. And then I think about success too. Like I think kind of like what hit me in response to what you were saying is like the not good enough wound
Hmm.
for men. Like I'm only good enough if I have so much money, if I have
Yeah.
so many. I mean, I kind of see that we kind of see this with like the red pill movement, where there's this thing about the chat. The chads have all the money, have they're successful at attracting women, all these other things because they have all the money and because they're X, Y, and Z. And I think it's kind of like, well, that's not necessarily the case at all.
Hmm.
And so it's not necessarily that somebody has a ton of money and that's the only reason he's ever going to get laid or anything like that. It's there's other realities there that are being ignored a lot of the time. But it's easy to objectify everything by a standard of quote unquote financial success or accumulation of things
Yeah.
or any of that other stuff. So it's kind of a profoundly fascinating topic to explore because success is a very success in that sense is very much performative. That's kind of what I was thinking about. Like,
Yeah.
when does success become performative as opposed to actually being something that's felt and embodied and lived?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why I've come back to this idea of, it's whatever it is, part of me wants to hold a space for the men that want to find their definition. Like, I don't need to take this from the guys who wanted to find success through whatever means, like whatever your thing is. Um, and I lost my train of thought, but it's around this idea of what when it becomes relevant is when it's reflected back through other people. So in that case, if it's because I've accumulated all these things, I have all these toys and this money and these investments, and I'm like super into crypto and all the stuff I get from it, and I found a partner who really values that in a partner. That's what they want. They want that kind of man. I'm speaking strictly of straight relationships, obviously. I'm fine with that. I don't need to take that from those people, but I don't think that's going to work for all men. And I'm certainly one of them who's struggling to find peace with that. And yet I still notice that that part of me shows up. There is that part of me still that's I can't explain away. That's like, well, what have you built? What have you made? How much stuff? What have you accumulated? It can be a very noisy part.
Well, I mean, this kind of brings to mind something that, um, show me what you've built and that will tell me purposes.
Hmm.
Like, I think, like when it comes to success, there's this really interesting aspect to that. And it's funny because I just got off a call with a friend of mine and I was sharing with him how, like, for me, one of the things I really have to like focus on, for example, is I love to create stuff, but sometimes that creation has become performative
Hmm.
where what I'm doing is I'm creating for the sake of like trying to do something or chase after something or whatever. But what I'm not doing is necessarily receiving, and I haven't necessarily put into place everything that would allow me to receive. And so
Hmm.
I just I create and create and create and create. But then I have a whole bunch of like half finished things or things that or like classes or books or whatever that haven't been fully optimized. So use that as an example because in a very real sense, like on the surface, it could look like, oh, well, he's been successful. He's written all these books. He's created all these classes. He's done all these other things.
Hmm.
And what I really kind of, it was interesting because what I realized in the purpose of that was like, well, I've chased after a lot of things and I've created stuff. That hasn't necessarily fully brought me to a sense of success. Like
Hmm.
what would bring me to a sense of success would be less reaction and more responsiveness. So it's not just creating for the sake of creating, but actually creating for the sense of, okay, there's this meaningful purpose to this creation. And here's
Mm,
what I'm going to do to support that creation so that it can do everything it needs to do and so that I can receive from that creation and the people who benefit from it. But I think like when I look at performative success, I think performative success seems to be rooted in reaction. What am I reacting to?
mm.
Whether I'm
What
reacting to not good enough wound or something else.
what am I reacting to?
Yeah, what am I reacting to?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think that's fair. What I'm noticing when I think about reactive reaction is I think, well, I know that when I'm in a reactive state, I'm probably not my best self, and this is where I think, well, what I really what I prefer to be is I prefer to be responding to what's arising. I'm trying to maybe this could help me a little bit. Is Can you give me more of like a concrete example by what you mean by that claim, like something specific?
So I'll share a good example here.
Thank you.
I've created like a number of courses and classes over the year, and on the surface level, it'd be like, oh, he's created these classes.
Hmm.
But what I didn't create were the systems to support those classes. And I'm not judging myself for it. I was where I was at, you know.
Sure.
I'm creating those systems now. I'm learning that process. And what I'm having to do though at the same time is there's just this little part of me that's like, but you need to do X does it create. And I'm like, no, let's take a deep
Mm,
breath. Let's slow down. This isn't about performance. This is about taking the time to set the foundations in place to put things together right. And some days that voice is really loud and
mm.
some days that voice isn't. So it's recognizing like that that just because I can do something doesn't necessarily mean it's quote unquote successful. And
Okay.
it's asking myself what is going to make this successful? What is going to bring the success, whatever that success is? And whatever the metrics are for that success, what is that going to bring to me? And how do I want to go about doing it? And so I don't know if that's concrete enough, but that's what I got for you.
Yeah, that's helpful. So this is what I noticed. I noticed that there's a part of you, a really like active and strong part of you that's creative. It's a creative drive to make new things. There's another part of you that seems aware that there needs to be some kind of structure. That without an art gallery, art is beautiful, but it's not being seen. Without an auditorium or a space for audience, a beautiful band is playing to the wall. It needs to have a little bit, and not to totally co-op what you're saying here, but a little bit like what I'm alluding to is like the ways in which what we create or put out are reflected back to us through other people. You're missing that in your creative process, but you still have this creative drive and the operators coming in going, yeah, but there has to be a way to get this in front of people so that they can then experience it and then come back and say, wow, I went through that course. This is what I got out of it. Here's what's changed about the way that I operate because of what you provided. That feels maybe more like success if I'm understanding you correctly.
Right. So instead of it being
Mm,
like performative success, and by this in this case, I mean performative is like, oh, I did this thing.
mm,
It's actually like, well, what's the follow through here? And how does this create? And so this is kind of what I've been thinking about because if I, when I read your article, I was thinking like, yeah, it is so easy to chase after stuff. In fact, I even commented about that. Like,
yeah.
like I'm like I've come to this fundamental realization of like, I don't want to chase after
Mm,
money anymore. I don't want to chase after these other things that I'm told that I'm supposed to want and have.
mm,
I'm certainly open to receiving them. I want to receive them, but I don't want to chase after them for the sake of appearing a certain way or performing a certain way because that chasing doesn't necessarily lead to what I really want anyway.
yeah.
And I think for men, like a lot of times, what I observe, certainly with myself, But what I've also observed with some other men is this tendency to chase after. And part of that, I think, is like, there is this kind of like cultural indoctrination around masculinity.
Mm.
We're supposed to lead, we're supposed to do other things.
Yeah.
And I find it fucking exhausting.
Yeah. It's by the way beautiful poetry if you think about the concept of the hunter and the pursuit and how traditionally men have been in relationships and pursuing, you know, that like we have kind of a long held tradition of pursuit. Uh, that's interesting. It is exhausting. It's certainly exhausting. I'm here's something I'm noticing is coming up in context of this. Now this is interesting because this didn't make either piece. I don't think it did. One of the elements that I've not brought into this conversation and might need to write a third piece on is this is the finality of my youth, which came into focus last year. About a few months before I turned 50, I had a cervical disc collapse,
Mm,
and for a guy who's been attentive to his health since I was like 19 years old, this shook me in a way I didn't see coming. It blocked off nervous pathways. It atrophied muscles. I lost mobility, strength. I lost muscle mass. It took me a couple of months to actually figure out what was going on. And when I finally had the surgery, it meant really starting at a level I wasn't used to being at and building from a level that I wasn't comfortable with. And it's been a bit of a haul this last year trying to get back to something like normal. The truth is I probably won't. But all of that brought into focus the idea that, my working years ahead of me, the years to make and here I'm talking about success not in terms of like top of the pile dominant alpha male. I'm making like I'm top 1% earner. More like, can I effectively, in some ways, I've started to redefine success with this event. Like, can I just get to a place where I'm whole enough physically and financially that the idea of living to be 90 years old, which is very possible with my genetics, isn't completely frightening because I can't actually work until I'm 90. And I can tell you it starts to, the working years start to break down probably around their mid 70s at best. That might be my best case scenario. And can I have enough of that level of success to not make being an elderly man absolutely awful? And
yeah.
can I still feel whole in that world? Like I think honestly, I'm no longer interested in fancy things. The days of like, really having, not that I would be object to having a lot of money, but I think just realistically, that's probably not in the cards in the very near future. I'm less concerned about that than I am about, being able to age without suffering more than is absolutely necessary.
Well, I can relate to that. I'm 49. I'm going to be 49 this year, in a little over a
Nice.
month. So, I can relate to that. And my mom's 85, and just recently had some health challenges, and it
Hmm.
really landed with me because I'm like, I'm not there yet, but that's where I'm going to be someday.
Yeah.
I don't want to be working unless it's like doing stuff that I want to do. I don't want to be working in my old age.
Right.
And there's this, and yet, like there is really this interesting, challenge because I think, what I see for a lot of people our age, it's kind of like this kind of like, well, yeah, I probably will be working later.
I probably will.
Yeah. I imagine I will as well. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I've gone down the creative route though, because I want at least a lot of that to be supplemented by what I do. And I want the
Yeah.
work I do to be chosen work instead of, having to work in a store or something like that. I want it to be something that I choose. And I think it's really kind of a good example though, of this notion of success that pervades our lives because it's very capitalistic in a way. This
Mm.
idea that it's very much driven around like, how are you useful? What can you do? How long can you be a cog in the machine?
It's
And
100% that. Yes.
there's a very it's kind of a patriarchal aspect to it in a way as well. There's that driven aspect. So it's one of those cases where, like, yeah, I think you've hit on something really vital about this thing around success, and how even like age defines it in a way, how it
Yeah.
shapes. And I see we've got Richard on here. Hey, Richard, welcome. If you have a comment or question, feel free to drop it in there with us. So it kind of leads me then to, like, what can we do to actually change our definitions and our experiences around success? Like, what actually allows us to maybe choose a different idea and concept of.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder too, I mean, because what I'm noticing at least, and maybe this is just the networks that I keep, the social circles I keep, tend to be people in these kind of middle years. I wonder if this isn't just part of the natural process of being this age, and grappling with this isn't what's actually just naturally happening for us and for other men, and to a certain extent I'm sure women as well. Like, what is my useful, what is my worth in this world as I age? It seems to be the time where that question comes up. And so sometimes I just wonder if this isn't just exactly where we're supposed to be. I don't know. I don't know if there's a necessary universal decoder for this, but maybe I'm certainly attempting to do that. I'm certainly attempting to slay that dragon with what I'm writing about right now. Like, let me just get my hands on this thing.
Well, it's interesting because, I had a conversation with another man. It was last week, and he made the point that, he's at a place in his life where he's done a lot of different things, but he wants to receive, and he's around our age as well. And so it was just
Yeah.
a really, there is something there. I think there's this process, if you will, of transformation. Now, Gina had a question for us. She said, if we threw away society's, at least Western society's, current definition of male success, what would you both want the next generation of boys to grow up believing success means?
Might need to write a piece on that. I don't know if I can answer that on the fly. I mean, the way I'm thinking right now, it's certainly gonna keep this piece about, whatever it is. Bear in mind that it's not gonna matter unless other people are involved. Unless whatever it is you're investing is, if it's not being reflected back to you, I just don't think I don't think it's gonna have the value that we think it's gonna have, whatever that thing is.
Uh, Quick note, I just want to welcome Laura. Welcome to the show here. If you have questions for us, or comments, feel free to drop those in the chat. In regards to Sheena's question, what I would really want for the next generation of boys and the younger men and stuff is really just the recognition that success isn't about beating everyone.
Hmm.
There's so much of an emphasis on competition. And yet, like, having gotten into men's work, what I see more and more is how essential collaboration is,
Hmm.
connection and community. One of the reasons that, I've taken lightly to writing articles in response to what other men are writing on here on Substack, and of course doing these interviews, is because we can all write our own articles and be in our own separate lanes, but I would like to see more collaboration and connection, community.
Hmm.
Sure. And not just in the Substack notes, but in the comments and the things like that. And so far, it's been really fascinating to me to watch that as I've written these articles, I've started to see more responses and more connection. And it feels like a deeper relationship as a result.
Yeah.
And that's what I would want for younger men as well. Because I think that that individualistic success doesn't work. What it seems to do is set up a very lonely road. It's me versus the world. It's me with my not good enough wound. It's me trying to prove that, I can be the next Elon Musk or whatever else.
Yeah.
And I think it leads to ultimately a very lonely life.
Yeah. Right. If I'm not top of the pile, then I might as well be nothing.
Right. And that seems to be a lot of the thrust of what I see going on out there in the world is that, there's just this drive, this need to have to be on the top.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I really this is the interesting thing. So I recently rebranded the men's mysteries to the submissive men's mysteries. Part of this is because I've been doing a lot of work around just my own lifestyle choices and things like that, but also like recognizing that there is just, there's there's like this prevalent meme or story in a lot of the men's work out there that men need to lead. I see this in a fair amount of the stuff put out there, like in relationships and things like that. And I'm like, but not every man wants to lead. I don't want to lead in relationship.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in control of the relationship. And granted, some could say, well, we can be collaborative, we can have connection. And that's fair. I agree with that. And yet I also think that there's also something to be said for recognizing that sometimes as a man, I could be perfectly comfortable receiving direction, receiving clarity, receiving, and I'm a straight man, so in this case I'm going to speak to that, receiving, from my sweetheart, her direction and focus and awareness on things, and not feeling like I have to take the lead in that relationship, and that might actually give her what she needs from me as well.
Hmm.
And so I think it's really, that's again where it's like I don't necessarily need to be the one in the driver's seat. I've been learning to take my hands off the wheel because when I have my hands on the wheel, I'm gripping for dear life and I'm white knuckle.
Yeah. Interesting, because when I think about the kind of leaders that I admire, when I think about leadership philosophies that I admire, good leaders do that. They do know that there's a time to receive and then a time to take their hand off the wheel. And they understand that anything worth doing is a co-creative process.
Mm.
I think the kind of leadership you're referring to is this sort of always dominant leadership,
Mhm.
which is, to pick up your former comment, exhausting. It's exhausting. And I can't think of any leader that I've admired that worked that way. There were people I tolerated. They were drivers, they got results, but I couldn't wait to stop working with them.
Yeah, that was one of the results they got. I had someone like that I worked for, and when I left that job, I wasn't happy. I was exhausted because it's like, oh, I'm finally done with this. And it was interesting because I ended up sleeping for like a solid couple days just to recover from that experience.
Wow. Yeah. That's not quality leadership as I understand it. I'm not the expert in leadership, but I certainly no leader I want to work with.
Yeah. So I mean, this and this is to answer your question, Sheena, yeah, I think that's really what I want. I want more of the collaborative, the connection, the community. I think
Yeah.
when men and women and however else you identify have connection and community and collaboration, it leads to a richer, happier life. And it's not necessarily about the accumulation of things. It's instead about the depth and the heights of relationship. That relationality piece that I think sometimes is missing from our culture.
Yep. We are in agreement.
So, another thing that kind of that sat with me with your article, and it was again why I wrote, was that I was really touched by you sharing, like, like here's like the areas of my life where I've had these, like here I
Mm,
was at 35 or something like that, but this is where I'm at now. And here's the kind of the areas of my life where quote unquote, like I was shooting for, I was trying to be successful at, but that changed, something changed for me. And so I'm kind of curious as since you've written that article, how has that landed in your system further? Because I think that there's something to be said that when we write something out or we share something like on a live stream or whatever else, that, yeah, we're putting it out there, but that we're also receiving it into our own systems.
for sure. Yeah, I agree. Part of the process of writing is figuring out, like, do I really mean this? Is this really the way it is? And then it's further solidified by shopping it in front of other eyes, and getting that feedback. Because I've definitely put things out that I thought, oh, I don't know how strongly I feel that. The question is, like, how did putting that out there land with my system? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to into the question of whether or not it's true, I think I everything that I wrote is true. It is true about what's happening for me, whether I like it or not. And just to give that a little bit of context, what I'm saying is, in that piece that you're referring to, is that there are these kind of traditional metrics of success, and in this case, I'm talking about success as a way of measuring our self worth. And I had presumed for a long time that I had done a kind of spiritual bypass with my meditation practice and um my contact with secular elements of Buddhism, that I was above that, or that I had graduated from that way of being. And what I noticed was that that wasn't actually true, that I still found myself trying to weigh my worth on this scale of success. And part of the reason for writing the piece was to was to put that out and be like, I'm kind of BS here. Because this is certainly true. There's a part of me that understands what's skillful, a skillful way to think about this. But there's also a part of me that's still tied to needing to prove to other people that I can be successful. When I was a kid, it was, I was going to be a successful actor. I was going to work in a rep theater doing Shakespeare, and that's how I was going to do it. And then when I was in my 20s, I was going to be very financially successful in the fitness industry, and on like that. And so all of that remains true, but there's something else to be known. I'm not done talking about this topic.
Oh yeah. I don't think either. So this kind of leads me to the next question, which is, we talked about formative success. What is the presence of success? And I'm going to define presence here for a moment.
Thank you.
So I think about performance, and performance is trying to put on a show. Whereas I
Mm,
think of presence as the embodiment of something, where it's like you have the confidence, the trust, the self-worth
yeah,
to really be wherever you are. And to know that that in and of itself brings presence to what you do. So
yeah.
that's what I'm asking when I ask that question.
Can you repeat the question? We're in agreement, by the way, and in terms of how we're thinking about presence.
What is the presence of success? So we talked about performative success,
Yeah.
but what is the presence of success?
So I have so many thoughts about presence. They all just bottlenecked as I try to, as I try to articulate them. Uh, to me, the presence of success is, to me, presence has a real light touch on agenda. And sometimes my thoughts about presence is that it has no agenda. I do tend to view presence as all of the best qualities of being. Um, and so I guess when I think about what presence has to say about success, is it's really I want to say it's kind of hands off, but there's a part of presence that's compassionate, and compassion is certainly not a hands off activity. Presence is certainly not involved with. I think superficial is the right word I'm looking for. The superficial distractions that I would otherwise tend to be chasing to define success and therefore my self worth. You know, in presence, I'm already there. I am already worthy. If I'm in a state of presence, or if I'm aligned with presence, however you want to articulate it, I drop the whole needing and clinging to becoming, and I'm in more in a state of being.
Mm. In that land. This brings to mind for me, like, kind of like the questions of like where self-worth and trust and respect enter into the equation around success.
Hmm.
One of the one of the things that one of the activities that I've been doing, uh, each day is connecting with myself, looking in the mirror and just saying, I love you. I trust
Hmm.
you. I respect you. And it's that trust and respect piece, I think, that's really important in a way. Like, love is important, but you can love somebody but not like them or respect them. But it's learning to
Hmm.
respect and trust myself instead of operating from a place of, you know, trying to get something, but not necessarily operating from a place of fully trusting myself and knowing myself. And I think this kind of goes back to that performative success standard. So, like, if I'm in presence, I'm not performing because I'm not trying to get validation. Instead, I've already validated myself. I'm already like fully in with myself. And so I can
Hmm.
trust myself and respect myself enough to know like where I'm at with everything.
Yeah, beautifully put. Taylor, I'm noticing I need to make a minor adjustment to my setup here. I'm going to lose power. So if you can just bear with me, I think I can do this fairly seamlessly.
All right. No worries.
Apologies.
No worries. Wait for you to do that. And then we've got a couple more questions from people.
Okay. Now we have power again.
I get that. These things took a lot of power out of the phone. It's like,
Sorry about that. I lost my good mic, but that's just going to have to be the way it's going to be. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So we have a couple more questions. So Sheena asked, so in relationship and community, can success be a byproduct or a result that you don't have to do anything to achieve, as opposed to something to strive for? More like an indicator of presence.
Yes. I mean, I think that's exactly the place where that happened. This is kind of the case I'm making today. You know, within community, when we're in a state of presence, or when we're aligned with presence, again, however you want to articulate that, I think we're no longer attached to these metrics of success as we traditionally define them.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And I mean, she also made a note. She said, it seems like performative success is always a moving target. And I think that's true. Like,
Yes, because what will rise will fall. You know, if you attach yourself to any metric, it's just the nature of everything. I mean, not to get too Buddhist, but whatever has the power to rise will die. That's how it works.
yeah, no. So I think I would also agree. Like, my answer to Gina's question would be yes. Like, there is that. It doesn't have to be something to strive for. It can just be not something that has to be done. As it can just be an indicator of presence. Like, there can be that perceiving and that falling in. Um, Richard had a question as well. He said, "Is success a well written, in your opinion, Substack essay?"
Is success a well written Substack essay?
Yeah,
I need a little help with what that question's asking. I'm sorry.
I do too, Richard. I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. I mean, you and I have both written essays on success. So clearly, so in that sense, I could say, yeah, because your essay prompted a response from me. And then, and we're having this conversation, and it sounds like, you're continuing to do some writing on it. I'm sure I'm going to be as well. So it seems like, in that sense, I'm not. So yeah, maybe if you could provide some context, Richard, that would be helpful. Um, here's what I'll say too. Like, I think that, like, what I've come to recognize is that the more that I trust and respect myself, the less I feel like I have to do something to quote unquote get success. The easier it is to actually just do what really speaks to me and calls to me as a form of presence and purpose. And then, like, from there, things just seem to flow.
Yeah. Yeah, that the conversation with yourself in the mirror about and trust was the big word I picked up on, right? I trust myself.
Well, for a long time, I didn't trust myself.
Hmm.
So, and it made it hard to trust anything else either. So that was the key thing that I ended up honing in on is
Hmm.
do I trust myself? And it's interesting because self trust is a muscle. Like, it's an exercise in a way. Like, it's not something that just happens. It's something that occurs again and again through our choices, and it's being willing to stand with those choices and be like, I trust myself to know I can handle this, that I can be fully there.
Hmm.
Okay, we got further clarification from Richard. Do you feel that you define success, in air quotes, as just doing something well to your satisfaction that you feel compelled to do?
I feel like that's a brand of success. I'm thinking like I built some furniture, and it was important to me that that furniture not be an eyesore because we're gonna, it needs to be utility, but also people are gonna see it. And if I'd completed it and it had a utility, but it was an eyesore, I think I wouldn't have had that feeling of success from it. So yes, in that context, but I think that that template is the wrong template to apply to everything.
Yeah,
Yes and
well,
no.
yes and no, right. Yeah, I have a similar response to that. It's because yeah, like, on a certain level, there is like that act of doing,
Hmm.
and there's that aspect. And then on another level, I think that what I continue to find is that, like, success is when success only ever operates from doing, then it goes right back toward that performative success, that capitalistic thing of like, okay, it's always a moving target.
Yeah.
I will never get enough done to feel successful
Yeah.
if I always am focused on that. And I think, and here's an exercise actually that I'll kind of throw in. I think this is really useful. So I journal each day. And one of the things I include in my journals is like, what did I get done today? What did I do?
Mhm.
And I'm not doing it to prove something to myself. I'm doing it to celebrate what I've done. So like, in the journal piece later on today will be, I interviewed you, celebrating the interview as opposed to I did the interview. It's celebrating, it's receiving
Mhm.
the success of doing that interview. And it's not and here's the interesting thing. It's not success in like a quantitative way. It's not like how many Substack followers or subscribers did I get, or did I get a paid subscription, or did someone decide to sign up for coaching, or any of those other things. I mean, all that's great.
Right.
More, but it's more like, hey, you and I took the time to have a really meaningful conversation today. We took the time to connect and deepen our community and our awareness of each other. We chose to be relational with each other as opposed to just being, like, oh, you're here and I'm there, but we actually chose to deepen the relationship.
Yeah.
And that feels like something to celebrate and honor. And so I trust myself because I've made that choice and you made that choice as well. So, hopefully you celebrated as well. I won't speak for you, but I'm just, it's just that interesting thing though of like
Yeah.
stepping away from just something that has to be done to maybe stepping toward I can celebrate. I can celebrate the doing
Yeah.
without looking on to the next thing that I have to quote unquote do.
It's a beautiful invitation. I appreciate that. I have a value for connection, but I'm not as internally driven for connection. And I think I could co-opt that idea in so many ways because I do work hard to connect with others because I know I have the value, but it feels a bit like work for me because I'm not as internally driven to do it in the way some people are. And I think the idea of celebrating connection, any connection, but all of them, sounds wonderful. Thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. I think it's something that I'm continuing to explore
Mm,
around men's work. That there's a piece to men's work that for the most part isn't spoken to. It's spoken to in some places. I've seen it spoken to like with stuff by like Trevor Baum and Dewey Freeman and stuff where they talk about relationality.
mm.
But in a lot of men's work, I see like I don't always see the relationality piece spoken to, and like what does it really mean to have a relationship? And it's actually interesting because I've had this ongoing dialogue with a brother that I met in May, and we've been exchanging voice notes back and forth. Like, what's the difference between transactive brotherhood and relational brotherhood?
Mm.
What does it mean to actually, quote unquote, call someone a brother or to be or a friend or anything like that? Like, what is the real difference between that? And the answer that I've kind of come up with is that transactive brotherhood is really more or less concerned about like what can I get from you? Like I'll call you brother and we'll have a great experience, but like I'm in the moment, but then like, I'll only stay in relationship with you if you're actually doing something for me. You're paying me money, you're doing something else. Versus relational brotherhood where it's like it's not necessarily like that I'm going to quote unquote get something out of you. It's not transactional. Instead it's I genuinely want to connect with you and care about you and whether anything happens or not, like there's this connection that we deeply honor with each other and ourselves that allows us to be in presence and achieve a deeper sense of like of community and collaboration,
Yes. Even when it's not convenient sometimes.
especially when it's not convenient,
Yeah.
because convenient brotherhood isn't brotherhood.
Right. Yeah. Arthur C. Brooks talks about this in some of his work, uh, deal friends versus real friends. Well, his point is that a lot of men, all their friends are deal friends. People through work or keep a lot of friends, but it's all transactional. You can pick up the phone and call them off hours for something. Somebody died. I need to talk to somebody.
And, again, this kind of ties back into that conversation around success, because if success is the metric, what it is based on metrics and everything else, it's going to be transactional.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's really relational, then regardless of what does or doesn't happen on the transactional level, there's connection and community. There's that sense of I've got you. Like I'll be there for you regardless of what may or may not happen.
Yeah.
And that was it was interesting because that actually is what led me to really evaluating some of the relationships that I had and being able to say, I'm going to step out from some of this because some of this just feels like it's more about like that transactional piece. And that's not like I don't want convenient brotherhood. I don't want transactional brotherhood or extractive brotherhood. I want genuine depth and connection community. And that's not going to happen overnight. It takes time to develop and foster. And it's that choice to do something from a place of curiosity and wanting to actually connect with somebody. And so so I've taken that same thing and I've applied it to Substack in the sense of like, okay, here's somebody who's writing a really interesting article. I'm going to include a reference to it and I'm going to actually write about this or write my own response to this article and share it. And I'm going to do it with this idea of
Yeah.
let's deepen the conversation so that there's actually a two-way or a multiple way conversation occurring around these things. And we're all growing as a community. We're collaborating as a community. We're deepening our relationship and the choice to be in relationship with each other instead of just being lone voices in the wind, sharing our ideas about what healthy masculinity could be or whatever the topic is, as the case may be.
Yeah. Well said. You're 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 I don't know how to articulate this. We're like right around this central concern of mine, and what I often come back to every time somebody's like, why do you work with men? Why? Part of it's, well, I just ended up in a lot of conversation with men, but my central concern for men is the isolation, and this is all part of that, right? As men become isolated or stay isolated, that's when all the bad things happen to them and the people around them. It's like I can never get too far from that mooring with this work. Everything always comes back to that mooring of concern.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're in National Suicide Month, right? Which is like
Right?
how many. So, I can safely say that I've been suicidal in the past.
Mm.
I've been in that place. I've had ideation. I've had a plan, things like that. It's been a few years, but the point is that like I've been in that space, and I think like really that's part of like where it's like where I woke up this morning and I was thinking like who are the friends that I could reach out to today, or who are the people I could reach out to today if something was going on in my life, and being able to kind of tick that off. And then I asked myself, who could reach out to me? Because again, it's not just one way. I want it to be both ways. And it's like, that's really the question and the key. And so to kind of bring this back to the original point of success, I wonder if what success really is a deliberate choice to decide what is really valuable or who is valuable, and being able to prioritize that over what society tells us is success.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, somebody's going to have to talk me off the ledge of this idea of the ways in which what we do matter most when we see how they come back to us from other people, which is just a different way of saying the same thing that you're saying, I think. To me right now, that is a more powerful and persuasive way to think about success. I know there's a part of me that's going, "What? Come on, man. Just get all the things. You have all the money, and then, I mean, this is the easy path to defining success, right? What we're up against is really the path of least resistance, because if you accumulate wealth and possessions and all the things, well, you're not going to have to go too far to get a feeling of validation that you've been successful. Of course, I've been successful. I've exited 3 companies successfully. I have a bunch of Italian cars in the garage. I got all the things in all the houses, and it was a yes, you're successful, no problem.
The irony of that, though, is that that particular lifestyle actually takes up a lot of work, takes a lot of work and a lot of time. It's actually a lot of hard work.
Oh, I agree, but I'm saying it is the no nonsense way. Like if you want to just, if you have it in you, you're gonna find success that way. A kind of success. I might question the durability or the wisdom of it, but certainly that path is going to have a reciprocation of, yep, you've been successful.
And there's
You're
that
not
operative phase.
fulfilling. What's that?
And there's that operative phase if you have it in you.
Yeah, yeah, yep.
Kind of here's something I've been sitting with lately, and this has been really interesting, and it is around money. I've been really letting myself sit with the idea, the concept of what would it be like if I were bringing 10K a month in, and kind of being like, if I brought 10K a month in, would that feel like it was enough? Would it feel would it feel good? Yeah, it would definitely feel good. I'm not going to deny it. It would feel great to have 10K a month coming in. And could I be satisfied with that? Like when is enough when it comes to success? And I'm not even just talking monetarily. I'm talking about any of
Anything.
that. And and I think that there is real value in being able to say, I this is the level of this is the level of quote unquote income or whatever that I would like to bring in each month. I think that there is something really valuable to that. I'm not going to knock it. I mean, I think that it's good to have that sense of like, well, here's what I would like to do,
Yeah,
and when is it enough?
yeah. What does satisfaction actually feel like?
Yeah,
I don't think it's very durable. I think we can glimpse it. I mean, I I used to try to write about the illusion of satisfaction on LinkedIn, and I did not get very much engagement from that. People don't want to hear that satisfaction's an illusion. That was not a very compelling argument. We want to believe that satisfaction's a bell we're going to be able to just ring and just stay and ring and ring and ring and ring and ring it and be there and that feeling. And unfortunately, it passes almost as quickly as it arises.
it does. I mean, there's just something very transitory about a lot of these things, and I think it's kind of the what I keep coming back to is the appreciation of the transitory nature of it, and the allowance that, like, perhaps the most fulfilling and satisfactory experience of the day could just be that I allow myself to be fully appreciative of the day itself
Yeah.
instead of thinking about all the other things that I'm going to do. What would it be like to appreciate the day itself instead of getting caught up in the, oh, chase, 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 chase?
Yeah. I mean, especially since it seems like we'll never arrive,
Or we have arrived.
or we're already here. But
We're already
yes,
here. We've arrived.
you're already present, right? Yeah. Yeah. Nicely put.
So I want to, I want to honor your time, and because we kind of, we've been on here for a little over an hour, and this has been a very fun and interesting conversation. And I definitely would love to have more conversations with you down the line. So we're definitely, and of course, I'm going to be continuing to read and reply to your stuff as well as I go through, because I think it's really, as well as other men's and women's work that's being put out there, because I think it's really helpful to kind of foster that community and connection.
Yeah.
And so, what I would love for you to do are two things. Briefly tell people on here where they can find you. I know in the show notes I'll put like your bio and where people can find you, but if you want to go ahead and do that, that's the first thing, and then I'll tell you the second thing after you do that.
Yeah. I mean, the place I'm most active is on Substack at toleranceofmen.substack.com.
Perfect. I love it. Yeah, and there's some really rich and insightful writing on there. I've been enjoying it immensely.
Thank you.
And the other thing is, what's a final word or phrase of wisdom that we can take with us into the rest of this day as we move forward?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. I th- what I would invite people, anyone listening to this, to do is to think through the ways in which they're presently defining success, and to notice where and how other people are involved with that expression and experience of success, and what do they notice is coming back to them from that, and just notice that.
Mm. Let that land, folks. For those of you who are here who really want that land, that is perfect. I'll definitely put that in the show notes too, as another exercise for people to encourage to do.
Thank you.
Well, Damon, I want to thank you for coming on here and for connecting with me more intentionally. And I look forward to the continued dialogue and conversation, communication.
Same, Taylor. I really appreciate that you reached out. I appreciate what you're doing here. I appreciate your mission, not only the mission to be useful in the men's space, but also to network those of us who are talking about related subjects. It's awesome. Thank you.
Mhm. I receive that, brother. All right. Thank you, everyone, for being on here, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.